Carroll. I am the director of programs at Camp Holiday Trails. I joined the team back in 2021. So last year was my first summer fully through. I'm officially 1 year in just as of last December. And then we also just recently had Taryn, who joined our team. Taryn has moved from Memphis over here. So Taryn, you joined us about a month, exactly a month ago, actually. So this will be her first summer with us at camp. However, both Taryn and I have multiple years of camp experience. I have a background as a medical social worker and mental health counselor. So that's my background in addition to having a camp background. And then Taryn has kind of come up through the ranks also through the camp industry and is now joining our team. So we're really excited to have her. We're really glad that you all are coming back this summer. It's going to be the first full week back at camp for Camp Youngblood since 2019. I've been able to go to different events with the bleeding community recently. So I was at the VHF Medical Symposium recently, possibly going to be heading out to Northern Virginia for the Education Day with HACA. So that'll be exciting later this spring. More information to come on that. But for now, we're going to talk about Camp Youngblood. Some of you I know have come to camp. Some of you have not been to camp yet. So definitely have any questions you want shared with us. But as you all hopefully are aware by now, camp is running for a whole week. So from Sunday, July 16th through July 21st. And so that'll be arriving on Sunday morning, early afternoon, and then picking your kids up on Friday. They stay overnight the whole time with us, have a great time. As you can see in some of these photos, which will be scattered throughout. These are all Camp Youngblood photos. So it's kind of great to be able to see like throughout the years, all the great memories that you guys have created at camp. So as I mentioned, Taryn and I are the program team at camp, but in addition to us, we do hire on seasonal staff. So under us, we will have about 25 to 30 counselors that are hired on, in addition to 2 other leadership team members. So your kids will get to live with 2 counselors in each of their cabins, depending on what their identifying gender is. And then that is how we assign our cabins. Counselors run activities. They are there at breakfast. They are living in the cabins. They are running evening programming. They're there when a child just needs to decompress, when they are having a rough time, if they just need a mentor, a role model, all of those things. And I know we have some other campers on our call, so they might be able to speak to that later on of kind of the experiences they've had with their counselors. But we are the program team. We do have an executive director, Tina LaRoche, who is on site, but she really is not involved in a lot of our programming in the summertime. She kind of pops in and out as needed. So it's primarily Taryn and I. We'll be doing a lot of the communication with you all. So if you ever have questions, you're more than welcome. I'll make sure that my contact information is sent out to you all at the end if you don't already have it. So you can reach out to myself or Taryn. So our mission is to create a community that empowers children and teens with medical needs to thrive at camp. I think that is in the Camp Youngblood, team from, Brenda and Heather and Robin, you guys can all kind of speak to that, I think, of what we produce and are able to provide for our campers throughout the years. But some of these are just photos of kids just getting to be kids, playing Gaga ball. I know I was talking with a mom earlier this week, and she, kind of shared how school sometimes they're trying to be safe and protect her son, but in return, they're sometimes actually putting a stigma on him and keeping him from doing things that he actually could do. He can go outside and he can play, and that's really what we want our kids to be able to experience. It's just the opportunity to build community, be kids, have fun, do everything else that their peers get to do in a safe and challenging environment. This is a little snapshot of the map of camp. It is obviously a cartoony version, but it gives you an overview of how large camp is. In the sense, though, I think some people could speak to, although, yes, it is large, it is also very tight-knit. There are camps that do span hundreds of acres. We are on 75 acres of land. We probably only use about 50 to 60% of that. A lot of our property is not buildable because it is so steep, so we don't build on it. And that is kind of the stuff more to the top right corner of the screen. As you can see, there's some roads, but what would happen is when you come to camp, you would come in where the number 1 is at the bottom of the screen, and we would do check-in in number 3, which is our riding ring. So we've changed check-in a little bit from past years. Right now, we've been doing it where we keep families out of camp, not necessarily to keep you from seeing anything, but more so that we can get the kids in and out and get on to doing camp. Sometimes families linger a little longer. It's also been easier that way. When we were managing more strict COVID guidelines, it was keeping families that maybe have not tested the entire family from going up into camp and possibly compromising some of our campers. So we've done all our check-in down there. Most likely our check-in will also remain that way for the season. That's what we're planning. So if you take that road that passes, so number one, it kind of follows up to the right. That is the road into camp. Your campers, when they arrive, after checking in with med team, Amy would also be there part of that for that week, along with, we have a HEMOC doc signed on who will be our medical lead. I'll talk more about med team a little further in to the slide, but they would all kind of talk. And after that's done, your kids hop in a hayride, get to go on up the road. And what's really cool is once you get to that top of that road, which is number 8, so that's like the middle of the screen, that's really where camp opens up, and you get to see the dining hall and all the cabins. You see other kids playing and running. We'd pass the dining hall and go into where you see like 9, 10, 11, all of that, and a lot going on up in that left corner, right? So that is camp. That is our cabin circle. That's where our campfires are held. Our pavilion is up there, challenge course, archery, all of that. I know it's hard to see because you're like, all I see are squares and circles. But be creative with me. I'm going to try and get some photos. I don't have a ton for you all, but I'm hopefully going to be able to share some more as we go on and work on that. We just didn't have a ton for some reason of just our cabins. So I can't show you the interior of our cabin, but to kind of explain it is you have one large room and we have 6 bunks or 6 beds. So 3 bunks. So, top, bottom, that comes to 6. We have a maximum of 6 campers per cabin. In addition to that, we then have 2 counselors in every cabin. So that's 8 people maximum. That's a 1-to-3 ratio, which is great in case, you have a camper that maybe needs a little more attention, or if something's just going on and we need to separate, we can. In addition to that cabin, all of our cabins have an attached bathroom inside. It is handicap accessible, has shower chairs involved, very large, oversized showers, bathroom, toilet, all of that's in there. We only allow 1 camper into the bathroom at a time. So, Johnny can't be brushing his teeth while Sam's in the shower kind of thing. We say 1 person in there at a time. And the cabins are really where the magic happens, I think, a lot of times, because that's where the relationships are formed, is those late night conversations. Maybe it's a game. It seemed to happen with Camp Youngblood, but Magic the Gathering is a huge card game that's played. It's still played till this day from some of the counselors who grew up coming to camp. And now they've passed it on to other campers. So it's a really cool thing just to see them playing games and just having fun times together. Here's a little bit of our schedule, kind of a snapshot. Day starts bright and early at 8 a.m. Everybody makes it down to flagpole. For those of you that don't know what flagpole is, it is a legit flagpole where we raise the flag up and down. But at the flagpole, what's really awesome about it and ceremonial is that's where we have our camp songs. That's where we do our dances. Its announcements are made throughout the day. When kids do something for the first time, we have something called the Book of Firsts that they get to write in, but they also get to share that with their fellow campers. So maybe it's, hey, I went down the zip line for the first time, or I made slime for the first time. I got I shot a bow and arrow for the first time. And so our kids are experiencing a lot of firsts in those moments. And so they get to announce that. It's sometimes where it is where our Tidy Bowl announcement is made. So Tidy Bowl is our, not necessarily a competition of who is the cleanest cabin, but it is a little bit known as being a competition. And if you are the cleanest cabin of the day, you get the golden plunger. It is a legit spray painted full-size golden plunger. And campers will walk around with that sometimes when they are super excited that they won, especially the younger the cabin is. I think the more they really just want to hold this golden plunger, there's just something unique that they just find fascinating with it. So we have those announcements. And then we have our activity rotations all in the morning. So we don't run activities in the afternoon when it comes to our camp specific. We have a lot going on in the afternoon, but it's not our activities, which I'm going to share what all of our activities are on the next slide. But that might be, we have this group of kids going to challenge course, another group going down to horses, to archery, all of that. So that all happens in the morning. Then we go to lunch. We have good old rest time. We say rest hour is the best hour at camp. It actually ends up being longer than an hour because there's a buffer for changing clothes, getting from the dining hall, things like that. But typically it is an hour. And that is just a time where all campers, all counselors go back to their cabin. We don't enforce that they have to take a nap, but for those kids that, just have that fear of missing out on something, this is a time for everybody to just chill out. It might be, hey, we're going to play a quiet game in the cabin. Some counselors might say, hey, everyone's going to be quiet for 30 minutes, no talking. And you might have one or two kids that fall asleep, right? But that gives them the chance to take a nap while the other ones maybe just need to calm down, write a letter home. And then that last 30 minutes, maybe they play a quiet game. They can read books during that time. And then after rest time, we come out full force, jump in the pool, have free time. So a lot of times some kids will play Gaga pit during then, or Gaga ball in the Gaga pit. We have tournaments that sometimes happen with Gaga ball. They get a little crazy. So we sometimes have to calm those ones down for our competitive campers. But jumping in the pool, obviously Central Virginia is hot. So we really like to get in the pool. We have about 2.5 hours almost, or 2 hours, in there. We usually wrap up between 5:45 and 5 o'clock. Again, gives time for campers to go back, change, and, go on to dinner. After dinner, we have, which I realized I duplicated that. It should say after dinner at 6:30 is when we have our WOW hour. So WOW hour is called Working on Wellness. We believe at camp that all of our kids, it's not just their medical and physical things we should be working on, but also their mental health, their social, their emotional. So sometimes that might be, hey, we're going to do yoga, or we're going to engage them in some kind of music activity. We've done creative writing in the past with some people, just different activities that it's more low key, just teaching them how other ways that they can invest in themselves. And then obviously on to evening programming. So that in the past has looked like African drumming, where we have a gentleman in town who brings in drums for every single camper, and half the campers learn how to drum an African beat while the other ones are learning African dance. We've done carnivals. We've had casino night, which is just different board games and things in the dining hall or in the pavilion. And then we wrap up by everyone's heading back to their cabin around 9. Gives time for anybody that hasn't showered yet to shower and then go to bed. Usually our younger campers fall asleep between 9:30 and 10. And our older kids, we say lights out by 10. Oldest campers, usually 15 to 17-year-olds, they're usually closer to 11. That's just naturally what happens. Even if we say lights out at 10, they're going to stay up and talk and have fun and be teenagers. And that's totally fine, as long as they're getting up and getting to breakfast the next morning. So we don't really have a problem with that. Meals, as you can see, we have some hearty meals throughout. Those of you that came for family day know that the meals are pretty hearty even then. I'm not sure if we're going to have the same chef this summer, but our meals I don't think have ever failed anybody by any means. I don't think anybody goes hungry, and there's always an alternative. If somebody doesn't like what's served, they can eat a wow butter and jelly sandwich, which is sunflower butter. We are peanut free for those of you that are not aware, or all nut free, excuse me, not just peanuts, but we're nut free. So we don't have peanut butter on camp. We have sunflower butter instead. So that is kind of the schedule there. I feel like I'm just flying through things, Brenda. So tell me if I need to slow down for anything. So here's a snapshot of our activities. We have 8 different activities that run throughout camp. 10 different activities. I can not count. We have 10 different ones. Drama was revived this past summer, actually by a Camp Youngblood camper turned counselor. So he was able to bring that back, and it was a great opportunity. Our kids really seemed to enjoy it. It was something different, creative. The arts and crafts, which that could span from, making friendship bracelets to a little mural around camp, or some kind of artsy thing that our counselors come up with. Horses, always a hit at camp, no matter what. We usually have anywhere between 5 to 7 horses that are given on loan to us for the summertime. And we have a horse director that oversees that with our horse volunteers. We usually, that is jam-packed. And so we're looking forward to having horses back. Again, archery and slingshot is offered. So we have a 6-lane archery course. In addition, we have a slingshot course. So full-blown actual slingshots, shooting lima beans at different objects on the wall. So we have a symbol up there, some pots and pans, everything is brightly painted. It's a unique thing. A lot of kids obviously don't get to shoot slingshots, I feel like, on a regular basis. So it's an opportunity for them to try something new. If we actually think that archery seems to be like a bow and arrow, seems to actually be easier for some of our kids than the slingshot, but they seem to enjoy the slingshot more. We have field sports. So that could be anything from, as you see there, playing, baseball, or counselors could get creative and we could have them out there playing Quidditch with lacrosse sticks and a wiffle ball. So you just never know what our counselors will come up with. We have music, so that might look like learning different beats. They might be playing musical chairs one day. Sometimes we have them learning instruments depending on what the skill set of our counselors are. So we do have multiple, I think we're up to 4 or 5 different keyboards. So we do have that option. Good old messy art. Every parent loves it when we send home slime, especially the lovely glittery slime. So that is what our little man here is making, is some slime down in messy art, but a lot of it is STEM-based activities. We did an egg drop at one point last summer to see who could have the best contraption, and we drop it from the 2nd floor. So messy art is actually under med corner. So it's a bottom floor and med corner is on the 2nd floor. And so they would go onto the back porch and drop things off. We have the challenge course, which very similar to horses is super popular. So challenge course involves 4 elements. We have our rock wall. We have the leap of faith. We have a new element, which I'm so sorry, I cannot remember the name because it literally got put in less than 4 weeks ago. It's replacing our multivine, which some of you that have come to camp know about the multivine. It's that thin wire that you shimmy across. We had to take that down just due to various reasons. So we have a brand new element in for the summer. And then our zip line is also included in that. We're hoping to add a bouldering wall in the next 2 years. So that'll be a cool attraction. Then we have waterfront. So that includes fishing, canoeing, kayaking. All 3 of those things will happen down there. We just got brand new canoes and kayaks since a tree fell on all of ours last summer. So I was happy to get new stuff. It's okay. So most of it is all brand new, except maybe 1 or 2 boats that did survive the crushing tree coming down the hillside. And then last but not least, nature. I know some of you experienced that came to Family Day, got to experience Alex at nature. Alex will actually be back this summer, but he will be our med liaison. So he'll be part of the med team. So switching it up a little bit there, but those are all of our activities. We may add some this summer, depending on, again, our counselor's skill set. Sometimes they will bring something to us and say, hey, I'm really good at pottery. Can we do that? Sure, we can try it if we have enough interest in it. So we're always down for that. Good old med corner. This will kind of help transition to Amy, who will go after me. But the top middle photo is an outside picture of what med corner looks like currently. And then anybody that you see in a red shirt is a med team member. So all of our medical team wears red shirts so that they're easily identifiable on opening day and closing day. Sometimes they wear them throughout. But as you can see, they're usually fun, lively people. We have, singing and dancing. We really encourage our medical team to get involved in programs. So learning the dances, building relationships. And the reason that is because we want our kids to not see medical providers as these scary people. We want them to see them as fun, loving, caring individuals, not just people that want to stick and prod them all the time or tell them what to do or no, you should do this. We want them to just be people to them. So oftentimes we ask them to go to activities, to have fun, to be goofy, just enjoy themselves while they're at camp. And so I know Amy's going to talk more about kind of what that looks like specifically for Camp Youngblood. Our med team is made up of an MD. So this year it'll be a HEMOC physician. So Colleen Drusgel is tentatively 95% signed on, and she is part of the clinic over at UVA. So she reached out to us actually to say that she was ready to come back for camp. So we're excited to have her. We might even have some of her other team members from the clinic coming over and helping out. And then under that, we'll have some 4th-year med students, nurses, EMTs, all sorts of different things. So I think that is, oh, I lied. I have one more slide after that. So what is it y'all need to pack? This will all be sent out to you once you decide that you want to send your child to camp. We send out an enrollment packet, which is a welcome packet, has a letter in it, all of these things. So this is actually a snapshot, a little bit of what is included in that, of the packing list. But obviously the basic things, obviously they need clothes. They need clothes to make it through the whole week. So if you know your child is just one of those kids that needs to change their clothes 2 times a day, then please make sure you send 10 outfits instead of just the 5. But we always do encourage, at least send a sweatshirt or a jacket of some sort, because it does get cold sometimes, whether they're in the cabin or maybe in the dining hall and we have the AC on. It's a cold day, depending on, I don't suspect it will be as much in July, but that's more so for our June kiddos. rain jackets, extra pair of sneakers, things like that, any of their toiletry items. Obviously, the biggest one is medications. Depending on what they're on, whether they're infusing, injecting, we need to know, and we need to make sure we have enough medications to get them through. And then we do ask that all electronics be left at home. So cell phones, smartwatches, tablets, things like that all need to be left. They don't need to come to camp. We are unplugged. Our counselors are unplugged the entire time they're at camp. And so they don't have their electronics on them. They have to really take a break from that. And it's a good thing for them. They won't die. And if you want to communicate with them, write them a letter. They love getting emails. They love getting letters. And we're working on a way to send letters back to families so that it's not snail mail, because we're realizing, that we need to get up with the times on that. So we might be working out a way of scanning and emailing kids' letters back so that it's not taking 5 days after they've come home from camp to get their letter. And you're like, oh, I'm really glad you had fun on challenge course. You already told me about that in the car ride home. So yeah, and no money is needed. We don't have anywhere to buy any food or swag or anything like that. So don't need to send that with your kid. And then outside food and drink, I think that one's a little obvious, but we always have to stress it. Please don't send your kids with any extra snacks. One, you don't know what allergies their cabin mates have, but more importantly, we are out in the woods. There are critters. They're not that big, but there's critters. And I don't think your kid wants a critter sleeping with them. But if they bring a bunch of snacks, there might be some critters with them. I can't promise anything. So that is the wrap up from me. So I'm going to hand it over to any questions that may have popped up in the chat or that parents have.
I've got a couple in the chat for you. The first one was, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you deal with very picky eaters?
Very picky eaters. Well, we try our best to encourage them to try something. It does depend, and they won't be the first camper, and they definitely won't be the last camper. We give them basically the option of, here's the meal that you have in front of you. If you don't want to eat this, then this is your alternative option. So they really get two options. They can eat what's in front of them. So usually a lot of times, we're going to try our best to do kid-friendly food. So whether that's chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, it might be burgers one day, it might be pizza, spaghetti, tacos are usually a big one at camp that we do. And then from there, if they're like, no, I don't want to eat that, then your alternative is, okay, here's a sandwich. We'll teach you how to make a PB or a wow butter and jelly sandwich. And so that's kind of our option. We really try our hardest to not make specifically alternative meals unless there's a dietary or medical reason why. Just because if it starts with one camper, it's going to lead over to, well, Susie got to eat whatever she wanted. I don't like what's in front of me. And so we do kind of try to stick to that, but we're flexible to an extent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got a few more questions here. The second one was, how do you deal with kids experiencing homesickness? Because I'm sure that happens every session.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it kind of goes up and down. Some kids get more homesick when they're around other kids that are homesick, right? And so every kid is different. A lot of times we really encourage our staff to decide, when is this child getting homesick? Is it when you're handing over the letter? Is it only at bedtime? Is it when they see their sibling, because their siblings at camp too? So it's really figuring that out first, but then also in a sense, distracting them. A lot of times kids get super homesick the moment we sit down at a meal or they're getting ready for bedtime. And what is the difference between that and the rest of the day? It's that they're finally slowing down and their minds are catching up with them. And they're like, oh, but I miss mom, or like, I'm at the dinner table and mom's not here, right? Or dad's not here. And my brother or sister isn't here for whatever reason, the sibling didn't come. And so we really try to encourage them. So we got to validate that emotion is happening, right? We know our counselors, a lot of times, are feeling homesick at times. We've all kind of gone through that in our own different ways throughout life. And so we validate their emotion, encourage them in, hey, we're going to go have fun. So, like, guess what? You get to tell mom and dad all about X, Y, and Z that we did tonight. Or what about when we get back to the cabin? How about we write mom a letter? If the camper is too young to write, like they're 7, 8, and maybe they're not ready to write like a whole letter home, or their handwriting maybe isn't the best yet, we encourage, hey, let's draw a photo, and then the counselor can write out what that is or help them write something. So a lot of times it's case by case, but it's distracting and validating a lot of it through the way. Some kids, it takes 2 or 3 days. Some kids never experience homesickness. Some kids are homesick the whole time until the day they go to leave and they get picked up. And then they're like, I don't want to leave. And you're like, what is going on? So it has happened numerous times.
Very good. All right. The next question was, how are cabins assigned by identified gender and age? Question mark.
Yes. So in the application, we ask for what is your child's gender and pronouns. And so we decide like what is it that they feel the most comfortable. So if they are, female identifying, then they're going to be in a female cabin if that is where they desire to be. Obviously, we're not saying, hey, teenage male, female are mixing genders, sleeping together of any sort, like just to clarify there. But we are going to have that conversation with you individually as a family member to discuss where is it, is this something that they just threw out there just because, or is this something that you guys are working through as a family to make sure that your child feels seen and that they are who they identify as, right? Age-wise, we do by 2 years. So if your child is 7, they could be with anyone from 7 to 9 years old. If they're 12 years old, they could be anywhere from like 11 to 13 or 10 to 12, 12 to 14. So it varies there. We always say a 2-year window is where we place campers.
Gotcha. Let's see. Will kids get to know who their cabin mates are in advance, or do they meet them at camp?
They will meet their cabin mates at camp. So because sometimes some campers do have to back out last minute, things like that, we usually are making our cabin assignments anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks prior to kids arriving to camp, because sometimes we do have late cancellations, things like that. So they all meet each other on the first day. Usually there's at least one of their counselors down at check-in and then one counselor up top. So when we say up top, sorry, I mean in camp. So up at where they get dropped off with their luggage, where they help get moved in, things like that. But they all meet each other on the first day together.
All right. Next question is, what if our son has to take meds during activity time? Will all meds be at Med Corner only, or can he hold his medicine in his cabin?
So yeah, I didn't mention. So with medications, our med team brings medications to every meal. And then they also know, so for example, if your child does take a medication, say at 10 o'clock or 10:30, and it has to be right at that time, med team will most likely go to them at that activity to administer that med, unless it needs to be done in Med Corner. So we try to work it out best that this child is not missing. In addition, what you guys didn't see in that schedule, because it was not the super detailed schedule, is in between the 2 activity periods, there's actually about a 15-minute break where everybody meets back up at the pavilion, has their morning snack, and meets with med team if needed. So if it falls in that time frame, there's a possibility they'd be able to take their medication. No medications are kept in the cabin. All medications must stay due to liability reasons and risk in Med Corner. So our med team manages all medications. Even if your child is 17 in 364 days, they still have to abide by the rules. Even if your child turns 18 while at camp, so like for some reason they have a birthday and they're 18, they do have to sign a release basically saying that they will still follow camp rules because they're on our camp property. They still would qualify as a minor when it comes to that medical care and following camp rules.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Also, will siblings be placed in the same cabin?
We try not to place siblings in the cabins with one another so that they have their own identity with one another and have their own camp experience. Now, if they're twins and you're like, no, they need to be together and it doesn't make sense to split them up, then we can talk about that. If they are 12 and 10, most likely they're probably going to be split up. And so it is case by case, but a lot of times we try to keep siblings separate. But if a family member comes to us or a parent comes to us and says, look, Tommy is 7, it's his first time coming to camp, his brother is 9, would there be any way that they could be together? There's a possibility we can address it. But a lot of times we keep them separate just so that each camper has their own opportunity, and Tommy can kind of learn his way around camp, but his brother's still around. And a lot of times they're seeing each other so much that living together, it's really such a small time period of being in the cabin. It's really just at night and sleeping that they're in the cabin. A lot of times our siblings get to see each other all throughout camp. And sometimes that's too much for some siblings. They really do like that separation. So I'd say, give me a call and let's talk it over of what is your concern, or do you want them separate or do you want them together, and kind of let's talk through it.
Gotcha. Other question, will there be 2 counselors with the group of kids at all times?
Most likely, yes. Very rarely is it one counselor. The one stipulation to that is all of our counselors get at least one morning off, which means that one counselor is off. So that falls, across 4 days, that's more like 4 to 5 counselors are off, right? But not from the same cabin. So if my co-counselor was off for that day, I would be alone with my 6 kids in the morning. However, leadership is aware of the days off and everybody kind of helps each other out. So if we saw like, hey, this cabin's really struggling, myself, Taryn, or another leadership member would step in to really help out that cabin. A lot of times we do have volunteers too around camp. So they would be able to assist as needed. Volunteers are not in any way, shape, or form in supervision roles, but they're there to, maybe you need to help, you just need help entertaining the, 7-year-old girls because they're just really talkative and you're just not in a talkative mood. So this volunteer is going to listen to all of them tell every story possible, about unicorns and things like that. So
that was all I had in the chat. Does
Okay.
anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? Just unmute yourself and type on up.
And on the note too of the counselors, we follow the rule of 3 at camp, which means that at no point in time will any counselor and camper be alone, or camper and camper be alone, volunteer and counselor, volunteer and camper, anything like that. It's always at least 3 people. So that might look like 1 counselor and 2 kids. It might look like med team, a counselor and a camper. It might look like a volunteer, a counselor, a camper, etc., going on and on. So we don't just let them kind of go off by themselves. That helps at all.
Any more questions? Anyone have any questions? All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for the information.
Yeah, of course.
I'm now going to turn it over to Amy Walker. So Amy has been a camp mom and an infusion nurse at camp for many years now. Not trying to age you, Amy, or anything, but I know you go back a while. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about the medical team and also your experience at camp as a longtime camp parent.
Sure. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm Amy. I have my bachelor's of science in nursing and graduated a long time ago. I worked at Riverside Regional Medical Center for a while as an RN. I still have an RN license. I'm not currently working in the hospital, but I use my nursing background to help out a lot in volunteering with VHF and other things. So I just wanted to talk about, Caitlin kind of went over some stuff, but so our med staff that is present at camp, we always have our camp doctor there. I'm there the whole time as well because it's 2.5 hours away from my home. So I usually stay on camp at all, on site at all times as well. We also have med students, some nursing students, nurses, but the professionals are supervising everybody. But it's a really good and unique experience for those students to get, and they really love getting to know our kids because it is such a unique community. They love getting in and helping with those infusion clinics because that's something that they don't get at most other clinicals. So they really have a good time with the kids. They will, a lot of them will make it fun and we'll practice different things on each other, and we just try to make it as low key as possible. So I'm talking from past experience about this, but we used to have a big intake thing up in so it sounds like you guys have changed intake a little bit, which is fine. We'll talk all that out. But anyway, just my main thing to parents is kind of let us know, like, just be honest and to let us know, like, if there's any with meds and infusions and all of that, if there's any special routines or the way you do things, write those things down so that we can know what you guys do to make your child feel as comfortable as possible, because that's what we want. And if there's a certain way that there's some families that have certain ways of documenting things. We have a certain way at camp that we do, but there's sometimes parents want to save all of the certain the certain vials or tabs off the boxes or something like that. If there's something like that, you can kind of let us know, and we want to make you guys feel as comfortable as possible and your camper feel as comfortable as possible. So let's see. Yeah, so we'll definitely need as thorough as you can be on your med history, on your application, and then whatever intake you can be, just let us know if there's any issues. So usually I'm talking about the kids that have bleeding disorders that have to, okay, so on intake, you guys let us know what your med schedule is. From that, we take everybody's med schedule and combine it into one big med schedule for the whole camp, if that makes sense. So we'll say, like, John needs his infusions Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, we'll take all of that, and then James needs his on Tuesday, Thursday, and then we compile it into a big sheet, and that's our infusion schedule for the week. So we usually have 2 times that we do hemophilia or bleeding disorders infusions, and that is first thing in the morning before breakfast, and then usually in the rest hour period after lunch, we usually have 2 sessions. So most of the time, the kids who come in for the very first morning sessions, we try to make those ones that don't need a lot of teaching with self-infusion, that they can kind of do it more on their own. But we will help them in the morning, and then in the afternoon is our big hour that we do a lot of self-infusion teaching. So we usually have about 3 or 4 campers in Med Corner at a time doing infusions, and it may differ a little bit with recent changes in medicine. But usually we try to group the kids from the cabins together so that they have that camaraderie of also infusing together as much as possible. And they're kind of, because they're similar ages in the cabins, then they're kind of at hopefully they're kind of at similar ages and stages, if that makes sense. Some are different. So we'll have, like, maybe cabins 1 and 2 do infusions the first session of the first 45 minutes or 30 minutes, and then the cabins 3 and 4 come down for the second 30 minutes of the rest hour. So but we'll have things set up for them so that they can do their infusion. And if everybody, you can leave their supplies, and we can use and make sure everything is labeled. Like if you have certain your medicine is all labeled, but like if you have a certain tourniquet that you use or band-aids or alcohol wipes, we have a lot of that stuff already, but like you can label all that so that it's all familiar for your camper. And we usually get all of that ready for them. So and set out on little on kind of like TV tray tables. There was a picture in Caitlin's slides that shows kind of how we set it up, or we have in the past. So that was from 3 years ago. So there will be changes, but that's how we had done it in the past. So so we try to, wherever the camper is at, we try to kind of assess where they're at in the self-infusion process. And my goal is during that camp week, is to help them get like one step further. So maybe they haven't learned how to mix their factor and get it ready. Well, that's great. We need to have them learn how to do that. Maybe it's even just knowing what their medication is, or learning how to put it on a tourniquet, or even or actually putting the needle in. So we try to encourage them through the different steps. Having the other campers there that are all doing it together, or it definitely encourages all of them to do it. We do give awards. The whole goal of it is not for them just to get the award. We want them to be ready to do their infusion, or like ready to do it. We're not pushing anybody to do self-infusion before they're ready. But if someone has done their first stick, then we do a golden stick award at the end of camp, and those are super special, and we usually do a few of those every year, and those are really cool, and everybody gets and everybody cheers and celebrates, so that is really fun. So Med Corner, we do always have medical staff on call. There is always a there's always a med person in Med Corner at all times, even overnight. We have people who stay there overnight. So if there's any emergencies, that they can go out to the cabins and check on them, and then assess and do whatever is needed. If there's any emergencies, we will always keep the families in the loop as well too. Like if we were gonna do an extra infusion or something like that, we would always call and let parents know beforehand. So yeah, like I said, self-infusion, so I know a lot of the kids are on Hemlibra now, so they're not doing as much self-infusion. So we're gonna have to talk with the HCC staff and see what they would like to do. But I know there's some training that still can be done and needs to be done, so that kids can feel comfortable if they do need to have infusions, that we can do that. So as a camp parent, I've had 4 kids go to camp, and they've had it's one of their most favorite weeks of the year. They love it so much. And so I have 2 that have graduated out, and but 2 that are going, and they're really looking forward to camp again. So there is definitely something to be said about what Caitlin said about Camp Magic. It is definitely, I try to stay on the outside of it personally, just because my kids are there and I want them to have their own camp experience, but I can see it happening, and it's just really amazing to see. And just letting the kids celebrate being kids and enjoying being there at camp and being outside and just celebrating each other is really cool to see. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions.
I have a few in the chat for you. I think you may have kind of answered the first one. Someone asked, are the parents notified if something happens and the kids need factor to treat a bleed?
Yes, we usually do. We're like, okay, this is what happened. We think, we kind of consult with the parents. We don't necessarily let the kids call, but med staff will definitely call and update the parents. And then after, if an extra infusion is given, then we'll continually keep the parents in the loop and call them every so often and say, hey, this is what's going on. The issue is improving. And so.
And I'm assuming there's a log that's kept, when the infusions, the
yes,
time.
we have. So yeah, and so we have the log of everything, of all the medications that are given, and that's also given to the parents whenever they come to pick the campers up.
Excellent. Another question was, for training and learning, are there sessions for the Hemlibra kids who need to learn how to do subcutaneous? You talked about infusion a lot. You work on that.
Yeah, we would definitely put those. We'll have to look and see, because there's going to be several of them. We would probably also put those in the afternoon sessions where they could learn, since a lot of families are switching over to subcutaneous, so we can do that.
And a follow-up to that is, so the kids who are in Hemlibra, they may not necessarily need to be taking an injection while they're there. Is there a way that they can still get that education, can practice, can learn while they're at camp, even if they don't specifically need to have an injection while they're there?
Right. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. We've had some times where we've had just education clinics at different times. So that's a great idea.
Yeah. Also, another question as well was having, since there's no phones on the premises, how are the counselors and the staff? Is there walkie-talkies? How is everyone talking to each other?
Yes, there are walkie-talkies, and Caitlin can share more about it, but there are walkie-talkies. There's a whole system that they have down that
Yeah,
counselors are experts at, and I am not. But there's one med person that always has a walkie-talkie on at all times. So
yeah, and just to touch on that, so yeah, every single one of our counselors has a walkie-talkie. In past years, we've done like one walkie-talkie per cabin. I kind of changed that last summer where every single staff member has a walkie-talkie on them, from leadership down to the bottom. And then when it comes to our med team, we have one walkie-talkie that stays in med corner at all times, so that if somebody's in there, we have one, we call it the go walkie, and that is for a med team member if they're out and about. And then our med liaison, who I didn't touch on much, but that's like an individual who works with our med team and our program and kind of helps bridge the gap of communication. They have one. And then Amy, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we now have a full-time seasonal nurse that's on staff.
Oh, that's
for
cool.
camp. So they would have a walkie. So that's
Okay.
4 walkie-talkies for med team plus 30 other ones going around. So there's no privacy at camp. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, even though they're not on screens, but there is complete communication.
Does anybody have any more medical questions? Since we've got Amy on the line here and Caitlin, does anybody have any more questions you want to ask or put in the chat? All right, awesome. So our last speaker tonight is, I'm going to introduce you guys to Bethany Swain. She is a HACA member, and her son Drew attended camp. Was it just one time, right? He's been once before. I think it was in 2019,
No,
the last
twice.
year.
It was twice.
Okay, he's saying twice.
Says twice. So he's been once or twice
Yeah.
before everything shut down.
Yes.
And I'm assuming Drew is coming this year, and his brother as well.
Yes.
So we will have
Yeah,
this.
that's the plan, that's the goal.
I just wanted Bethany to share a little bit and Drew to share a little bit about their camp experience and tell us about what they love about camp and why they're going back again.
Yeah, so we feel super lucky and connected to CHT, having been able to go to a handful of family weekends. So being there as a whole family, like as a parent, been able to see so much of what it's like. And then yeah, Drew's been twice. And so Drew is unaffected. He does not have, he's a sibling of so there wasn't the same kind of medical learning stuff that was there. So he wasn't leaving with goals and helping to advance that. But yeah, they had a fantastic time. The first time that Drew went, I mean, he'd never been away from us for that long before, so it was very much a new experience. And he did great. I mean, he absolutely loved it. So when I was trying to have him remember, I'm like, did you get homesick at all? So he'd said that he did a little, but it's so much fun that yeah, the kids are busy and making friends and singing songs over and over and over again. And so yeah, so it was really, really great, especially for our first camp experience. So where Drew doesn't have a bleeding disorder, he doesn't have other kind of health stuff. So it was really, really nice being able to know that there's the medical staff there. So we have used the medical staff. Twice. So once I fell during family camp and totally skinned my knee and I also have bleeding disorder. So I have been through and sat in the room and get with the team and saw all of their supplies and all of the stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, like they really got this down. And I guess ironically, the last time we went, when we were picking Drew up, Evan, my bleeder, had fallen and actually needed treatment and help. So we were able to do that.
The hospital.
Yeah, but we started with them to figure out whether yeah, we ended up going to the hospital down the road. But it was just great to to be there and to know that like you don't have to like you can just say, you know, bleed factor 8, right? Division, like yeah, they understand what the bleeding disorder, and it was you know, really it was a really just special yeah, to be able to stuff just be so normalized, right? You're just kind of the norm. So
And
Todd's
want-
here.
I
Drew's
want
done.
to add as well to that Drew, when we got there, felt so comfortable that he kicked me out of camp as standing in between two beds. And he was so comfortable with the counselors that that it was really, you know, exciting for me that he was enjoying himself so much at the very beginning of camp, from the hayride up to where the camp, his camp place was, his cabin.
Yeah. So happy to take it. Are there any questions now or offline? And so is Drew.
What I am?
Yes. Yes, he is. I think the team did a really great job of laying out the experience.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I thought that was you, Todd. I wasn't sure for a second there. Thank you for sharing you guys' story. Does anybody have any more questions for any of the speakers? Anything for Caitlin before we sign off? I went ahead and put, so how we're doing registration is we have a pre-screening form for people to fill out. So if you are interested, I went ahead at the very beginning and I already have the link in the chat, so you can jump on there if you want to go ahead and fill this pre-screening form. There's only a handful of questions, just to make sure that everybody, you know, there's a few just pre-screening questions, and once you've answered them, then Heather and I will review for our chapter members, and then if you've met the criteria, the basic criteria, then we forward you on the email that has the application. And from that point on, you're pretty much dealing with Caitlin, you know, and probably with Taryn as well. So we're kind of here as the gatekeepers. We're getting you the application, but questions about camp, you can direct them to camp itself. We really, you know, we work with them. We just get you in touch with them. But, you know, any questions you have, you're welcome to, you know, to email us. We're just going to forward you over to Caitlin, so she can answer any camp specific questions and help you work through any concerns. You know, I'm sure she's done this a million times, you know, is more than happy to answer questions and, you know, but we're really excited to have everybody, you know, to become, everybody. Oh yeah. And Caitlin's put her email in the chat, so feel free to copy that and save that someplace as well. But we're just thrilled to be able to have week-long camp again. It just feels like it's been a million years. And, you know, we've made a valiant effort the last few years with day camps and virtual camp and pop-up camps. And, you know, they're great, but it's just not the same as actually like going to camp. So, did you click on that, Jennifer? Did you guys click on that? Look at the very top. There should be a link.
So, Brenda, if you post a link and someone logs in after, they don't see what you had posted before they.
I just put it in the chat. I just put the one that's on our website. If anybody wants to go there, and also just reach out to us and we can send it to you all directly, and we'll keep sending it out. You're going to get sick of seeing stuff about camp, I'm sure.
Exactly. And it's on our websites and stuff too. Bethany.
So I have a question for Caitlin, right? So this will be the first camp post-COVID.
Yes.
So kids are different than they were before.
You're telling me.
And I know even just from the
Not you though, Drew. You're normal. You're still the same. You haven't changed.
And I know just from my relationships with other HACA moms and parents and stuff, like some of our kids, it's not just the needles stuff. There's a lot of other emotional and maturity things and stuff that's just been extra hard. So I'm curious how your team is going to deal with that, because it's going to be different than it was all those years.
Yeah,
that we've been there, right? It's going to be, you know, a different.
Yeah, we definitely got a snapshot of that last year. And so last year we ran at 30% capacity for our other programs. We didn't have Camp Youngblood, but we still ran summer for 10 weeks. We still have 10 weeks of summer going on this year. With that being said, you know, one of the things I kept telling my staff last year was kids would be like, they're 12, but they're acting like, you know, a 10-year-old. And I'd say, you have to remember they're they're still playing catch up. And I don't know if we'll be saying that this year, but we might, where we're saying, hey, they missed out on a year, 2 years of social interactions, of schooling, of all these things that were their normal routine, right? And so especially the younger they are, I think somewhat the more they struggled, especially, you know, those kids that missed the start of kindergarten face-to-face or were in kindergarten and then missed a lot. And so we just have really worked with our counselors on, hey, here's what the developmental ages are, but know that kids move around. And also let's talk about the fact that, you know, these children do have, you know, all of our campers coming in some capacity are impacted by a medical condition. Even if they're a carrier or they're a sibling not affected, they're still impacted by it. They're still living in that household. So let's take that and apply the trauma effect to this. There's something going on. Their life is not always normal. There's a lot of doctor's appointments. Sometimes there's visits to hospitals, or there's this medication, there's this routine they have to follow. And so it's just kind of talking through and educating them a lot on that, and just really showing the person as a whole. As a social worker, I look at things as, you know, there's a whole person, and there's what we call person and environment. I can go on a whole soapbox about that and give you a lecture if you want, but we don't have to do that tonight. But just knowing that, like, your environment impacts you and you impact your environment, and it goes twofold. And so I hope that's reassuring, but a lot of times it's been a learning curve coming back, and everybody keeps saying, like, yeah, things are different. Heck, even our counselors it was a very different year working with our counseling staff who, you know, a lot of them were 19 or 18. They've never had a job because of COVID. And we were their first job. And for some, it was really good. Some of them, maybe not so good. And so, you know, it's a growing thing for sure. Yeah. I appreciate you asking.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody else have any more questions? That we're hitting the 9 o'clock hour now. Now you guys have kids to put to bed and things going on. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bethany, for sharing your stories, for sharing information. You know, reach out to any of us. You know, you can email me, the HACA website, the VHF website. You know, we've got all the information on camp. The link is in the chat. Yeah, like Heather said, you're going to be so sick of seeing information about camp, and all the deadlines are in there as well. So if you're, you know, there's a document that has all the deadlines too. So that's the thing, we have to make sure you get those doctor's appointments scheduled, make sure you get that paperwork filled out once you do the application. So, you know, there are deadlines that go along with it. So the sooner you get the screening filled out, the sooner you get the application filled out, the smoother the process will be. So anyway, but thanks everybody again for being here. Really appreciate it, and hope to see everybody at camp in July. Thank you so much.